Hi and hello everyone. Welcome back to Scholar IAS current affair classes. We have brought you some of the important articles, current affair articles from various sources, and we will see how it is related to the UPSC syllabus, and we will also see how we can use these points in your exam. Let's not wait. Let's get into the classes. So the first article that we will be looking at is syntax on sugar. This is an article from the Hindu. And why are we covering this? It is related to GS3 paper, economic development. So under this a question can be asked, so that's why we are covering it. Before we get into the article, let's try to understand what syntax means. Syntax is a type of excise tax. So it is levied on sale of a particular good. And when it comes to syntax, it is very specific to those goods that are seen as harmful to the society. For example, tobacco. In India, we are imposing sin tax on tobacco products. A prelims question can be asked from these 2 points itself. For example, a statement on sin tax, the nature of sin tax can be asked. Sin tax is a direct tax. So we know that sin tax is an excise tax. So the statement is incorrect. The same way, the second statement can be given saying that India does not impose sin tax on any products. It is also not true. So both statements would be incorrect. See, whenever you study, you will have to think the statements from a perception of a question setter. Imposing sin tax on tobacco is understandable. But why is sin tax imposed on sugar? There is basically a health consciousness that is growing among people which views sugar as an unhealthy product that is totally devoid of any nutritional value. And they also see a replacement in the form of wheat, rice and other things. So this sugar is seen as just because it is seen as an unhealthy product, sin tax is being demanded on sugar. But this would have some detrimental impact on producers of sugarcane and mill producers. While the demand for imposing sin tax seems reasonable, the question is whether it will be effective or not. UK already imposed sin tax on sugar, but they couldn't implement it. The reason being, sugar is an essential ingredient in almost all food items. So, imposing tax on sugar would also lead to inflation because the rise in price of sugar would subsequently increase the price of the food items that are prepared using sugar. So, because of this, it had to drop it. It was not implementable. And another aspect of it is the alternatives that we look at for sugar is artificial sweeteners. When we use artificial sweeteners, it can damage our kidneys. So again, it doesn't serve the purpose of imposing tax on sugar. This inflation and impact on health is a concern from consumer standpoint. But we will also have to look at the concern that would arise from supply side of it, that is farmers and mill owners. Farmers, those who are dependent on sugarcane crop, would be impacted, and also the mill owners who have to produce sugar out of sugarcane will also be impacted because of this sin tax. So this aspect of it has to be taken into consideration. If still government wants to continue with this sin tax, then farmers should also consider to change their cropping pattern. They should switch their crops from sugarcane to cotton. Why cotton? Why can't it be other crops? See, basically sugarcane is produced in black soil. So black soil is conducive for the other crop that it is conducive for is cotton. So switching to cotton would be beneficial for the farmers. So students, this particular point on black soil is very important. Keep this in mind because it could be asked in your prelims exam. And the article as a whole could be asked in GS3 paper of economy section because a question can be asked about the impact of different tax on the economy as a whole and on different sectors. So you will have to use these points. You should be able to relate these points to that question, and we will be able, then it would give different aspects to those questions, bring in different variety in the answer writing as well. The next article is Judicial Activism. This is an article from the Indian Express. And why are we studying this? It is related to GS2 paper of polity section. Okay, so here you can see in the syllabus it is mentioned that functioning of executive and the judiciary. So under this aspect we will be covering this article. In recent times the judiciary has been involving itself in the functioning of RBI. For example, the extension of loan moratorium and the waiver of interest on interest. Even before this, the RBI's ban on virtual currencies was quashed. And in the last year, RBI circular that mandated banks to initiate insolvency proceedings against defaulting companies was also squashed. So these instances has shown judicial activism in central bank's monetary activities. Before we get into this article, let's try to understand the concept called polycentricity. Polycentricity problems are those problems that will have cascading effect on various other aspects. So policy decisions that are also based on this polycentricity. If judiciary gets involved using its adversarial jurisdiction powers into these kind of polycentric problems, it won't be able to resolve, and rather it would end up giving some inferior outcomes. So normally judiciary refrains from reviewing any policy decisions. The functions of RBI are also polycentric in nature. So involvement of judiciary in the decisions of central bank is not suitable. For an example, let's say central bank sets a repo rate and it would have an impact on various other aspects like, let's say, borrowers. It would impact borrowers differently, it would impact the depositors differently, and it would impact whole economy differently. So when judiciary gets involved, it won't be able for judiciary to resolve this whole issue by hearing to all the affected parties and deliver a fair judgment. It is not possible. So judiciary should restrict itself to bipolar disputes that involve central bank and other banks. For example, if central bank has some issues with other banks in terms of regulations, maybe then judiciary's involvement would be possible, because the stakeholders are only two, the central bank and the bank that is being regulated. In case of policy decision, it involves many other stakeholders. So it would be fair for judiciary to get involved, to restrict itself to only these kind of bipolar disputes rather than polycentric disputes. Students, you can see how this article has given you a very good technical point that you can use in your mains answers. For example, if a question is asked, critically analyze the judicial activism, role of judiciary or functioning of judiciary, then you can use this point to criticize how judiciary's involvement, judiciary's activism actually impacts the decision making. So this is how you will have to relate it, and this is how you will have to use it in your answers. The next article is administrative morality. This is an article from Indian Express, and this is also related to GS2 paper of governance and polity. Okay, so under this section you can see the challenges that are related to federal structure. Once you get into this article, you would know why we are bringing it under federal structure. Okay, Indian democracy has always been a vibrant democracy because of its institutions and the procedures it has adopted. And despite this vibrancy, there has been some sort of friction that has existed between the center and the state. The reason being, there are different political powers in center and state. But even in this scenario, even when this friction exists, if the political consideration become more important than the administrative considerations, then it is an issue. That is where the administrative morality gets affected altogether. Now we will see how administration gets affected by political considerations with some examples. Okay, first let's see the legislative domain. How legislative domain gets affected when there is a friction between center and the state. Recently there has been a law that was passed around agriculture reforms. 3 laws were passed, and when this was passed, many states opposed it, in particular Punjab and Haryana. And Punjab even legislated a law to counter center law. So whenever center gets involved, legislates in a state list, a friction creates. And when this political consideration and when this friction is too high, then administration takes a backseat. And when this central state rift spills over to the areas of investigation, it affects the functioning of some central investigation agencies as well, like for example CBI. For instance, for CBI to get involved into cases that are under the jurisdiction of state, it needs general consent. But because of this rift, states start withdrawing this general consent that is given to the CBI. This affects the functioning of CBI as well. Now we have understood how this constant confrontation between the center and states is actually weakening the federal system itself. So the only way to counter all this is through cooperative consultation. The center will have to engage with the state the same way states will also have to engage with center and mutually support and respect their decisions. So this is the only way how we can ensure that the political tensions between the center and state doesn't actually impact the administration or the governance of the country as a whole. So students, a question, these points that we have gained from this article can be used in your mains answer writing in GS2 paper. If a question is asked on federal structure, the functioning of the federal system in India, these examples of about how center's involvement in state subjects, center's legislation in state subject, as well as central investigation agency's role in state, how it impacts the whole federal system. These can be added in your answers and it will fetch you more marks. So make sure you are able to use, you cannot actually expect a question directly on this administrative morality article, rather you can use these pointers in your answers, federal system question. Okay. The next article that we are going to look at is marine plastic pollution. This is an article from the Financial Express. This is related to your GS paper 3. Okay. So under GS paper 3 we have sections called biodiversity and environment. Okay. Under this the syllabus states about conservation, environmental pollution, degradation and environmental impact assessment. First let's try to understand the situation of marine plastic pollution. So it is estimated to be around 8 to 10 million tons annually. Okay. So even World Economic Forum has estimated that 32% of all single-use packaging does not go into the collection system. That means what? It ends up as a plastic waste into the oceans. And in India, the Ganges system is one of the top 5 rivers that dumps plastic into the ocean. And with this corona in place, now we have been using the PPE, the personal protective equipment such as suits, masks, gloves and everything, and these also have increased the plastic pollution. Main source of this marine plastic pollution has been the land-based sources actually. So the main reason for such marine plastic pollution is 3. One is the failure to curb plastic waste through waste source segregation, and second one is failure to strengthen material recovery facilities, and the third one is failure to devise a market-based business model to incentivize the diversion. These 3 reasons have led to land-based source being recognized as a main cause of marine plastic pollution. What happens is these plastics, land-based plastics, through open drains ends up in rivers and finally into the oceans. Students, keep these points in mind because it can be used in your mains answer if a question is asked on the reasons for marine plastic pollution. These can add value to your answer actually. When it comes to the challenges, the main challenges are lack of common definition that we have for single-use plastics and also affordable alternatives. Unless these 2 challenges are tackled, it won't be possible for us to tackle the marine plastic pollution as a whole itself. The governments and international organizations will have to focus on curbing this land-based source because it is the main cause of marine plastic pollution, and also there is a need for international cooperation because it is not a single country's issue. It is an issue that affects the whole globe itself. and also an institutional frameworks that involves all governments needs to be developed. Only by this way we would be able to face this challenge. Okay, so students, we have come to the end of the session. Hope you all enjoyed the class. For more videos, subscribe to our channel. Also visit our platform for more free content, free current affairs material, notes, videos, etc. Thank you guys. Happy learning. Bye bye.